The story begins not in Washington nor Abuja, but somewhere between, in the realm of dreams, where the spirits of nations meet before their decisions take form in the waking world. It was said that when a man sleeps with the burden of a nation on his chest, the winds of destiny whisper louder than thunder. That night, Esiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu could not sleep. Lagos lights burned below his window like restless stars, and the noise of the city murmured in his head even in the silence of Aso Rock. The people were crying, not in words, but in hunger, in weariness, in that deep sigh that escapes a mother when the price of bread rises again. He sat before his Bible, open but unread, the words swimming like fish in muddy water. "Lord," he muttered, "show me the path that brings peace to this restless land." It was then that a knock came, gentle but strange. A messenger entered, holding a letter seal with a golden crest. The White House. Inside, written in Trump's unmistakable bold letters, were these words: "My friend, I had a dream. You and I must meet. God is not done with your nation yet." Tinubu smiled faintly. "Dreams again," he said under his breath. But something stirred within him, like the echo of prophecy. Weeks later, Air Force One and Nigeria's presidential jet stood side by side in neutral ground, a private retreat in Jerusalem, city of paradox and prayer. The world did not know of it. It was a meeting away from cameras, away from handlers, where the soul of power could breathe without protocol. Trump was already there, sitting under a carved wooden cross, a Bible open on his lap. His hair, silver in the sunlight, glowed like a crown. He looked up and said with a grin, "Esiwaju, you made it. God told me you would." Tinubu laughed politely, his steps deliberate, his agbada fluttering like the wings of a white bird. "You're looking well, Donald. I hope the angels didn't delay your flight." Trump chuckled. "The angels fly first class. I came after." They shook hands, firm, symbolic, two continents clasping over centuries of faith and ambition. Then came silence, the type that asks questions without speaking. Trump broke it first. "I've watched your nation, Bola. I've seen men pray but still steal. I've seen churches rise while the poor fall. I asked God, what is wrong with Africa? And he said, they have built temples but forgotten truth." Tinubu nodded slowly. "We pray loud, but our hearts whisper lies. It is a sickness of the soul." Trump leaned forward, his voice lowering as though angels might overhear. "Do you know the secret of Christianity?" he asked. Tinubu frowned. "Love," he guessed. Trump shook his head. "Power without love destroys. Love without truth deceives. But the secret, the real secret, is service. The Son of God washed feet. Yet men like us want others to wash ours." The words hung heavy in the air. Tinubu looked away, troubled. He had been called many names: strategist, kingmaker, reformer, but never servant. Trump continued, "America lost a soul when we mixed faith with fame. Don't let Nigeria make the same mistake. Christianity is not a campaign strategy. It is a call to die daily, to ego, to greed, to pride." Tinubu felt the words pierce like arrows. The room seemed smaller now. "You talk like a preacher, Donald." Trump smiled faintly. "In a way, every man who meets God becomes one." That night, they dined beneath golden lamps. The air smelled of olives and incense. Trump spoke of revival, of nations born anew. Tinubu listened, his mind torn between duty and revelation. Then, as the evening wind drifted in from the desert, Trump stood and laid his hand upon Tinubu's shoulder. "The Lord told me something," he said softly. "Nigeria's healing will not come from policy. It will come when her leaders kneel before her people." Tinubu's eyes widened. "Kneel? Leaders do not kneel before followers." "Then you have not met the Christ," Trump said. Silence followed, long and sacred. Later that night, Tinubu wandered into the courtyard. A small fountain whispered beside him. He gazed up at the moon and thought of his people, the market women, the street children, the old men who still called his name with hope. And in that moment, a voice, not Trump's, not his own, whispered in the wind, "He that is greatest among you shall be your servant." He turned sharply. No one was there. Yet something within him shifted, like dawn breaking over dark waters. He fell to his knees beside the fountain and prayed, not as a president, not as a politician, but as a weary soul seeking redemption. And though the stars said nothing, the night listened. When the presidential jet touched down in Abuja, the air seemed thicker, heavier, as though the very soil carried the weight of unseen spirits. Tinubu descended the stairs quietly, the familiar shout of aides and guards echoing around him, but he barely heard them. His heart was still in Jerusalem, under that wooden cross, where a man he once thought of as mere politician had spoken words that refused to leave his soul. Service, Trump had said, that is the secret. Tinubu carried that word like a burden wrapped in gold. Every meeting afterward, every paper he signed, every smiling face that bowed before him, all seemed to mock that single truth. The next morning, his chief of staff entered his office with the usual energy. "Your Excellency, the governors are waiting. The meeting on the new energy bill is ready. Shall I call in the press?" Tinubu raised his hand gently. "Cancel the press," he said. The chief of staff blinked. "So, cancel it," Tinubu repeated. "We will meet privately. No cameras, no statements. I want to hear them." The man hesitated. This was not the Asiwaju he knew. The Tinubu of old thrived on spectacle, on the sound of cameras clicking like applause. But this new tone, quiet, unsettling, almost holy. That day, the governors came, loud as always, each carrying hidden ambitions in their briefcases. But as they took their seats, they found Tinubu sitting not behind his grand desk, but on a simple wooden chair in the center of the room. No podium, no formality, just a leader among equals. "My brothers," he began, voice steady, "today we will not discuss politics. We will discuss people." Murmurs spread like ripples on water. "Do you know," he continued, "that a mother in Katsina sold her last wrapper to feed her child last week? That in Lagos, the man who built our roads now begged beside them? We sit here with titles, but the people are hungry." A silence settled, strange and deep. Then one governor laughed nervously. "Your Excellency, hunger has always been with us. We must face realities." Tinubu's eyes glimmered. "Reality," he said, "is that leadership without compassion is cruelty in disguise." The men stared. It was not just the words. It was a fire behind them, the faint echo of Jerusalem burning in his tone. Something in him had changed. Later that evening, he dismissed his aides early and walked alone through the gardens of Aso Rock. The night smelled of rain and dust, and the frogs croaked like prophets. Somewhere beyond the hedges, he heard the faint voice of a janitor humming a hymn, "Nearer, my God, to thee." He followed the sound. The janitor, startled, dropped his mop when he saw the president himself standing there. "Good evening, sir," the man stammered, bowing low. Tinubu smiled softly. "Don't bow too low, my friend. Your back will ache before your time." The man laughed awkwardly. "It's my honor, sir." Tinubu watched him for a moment, then said, "What makes you sing when you wake?" The janitor looked up, puzzled. "I don't know, sir. It helps me forget the hard things." "And what do you pray for?" The man hesitated, then whispered, "That God will help our leaders see the people the way he sees us." Tinubu's heart trembled. He wanted to speak, but no words came. He simply nodded, placed a hand on the man's shoulder, and said, "Maybe God has already answered that prayer." That night, he returned to his study and opened his Bible again. The verse from Matthew stared back at him like an old friend. "He that is greatest among you shall be your servant." Tears filled his eyes, tears not of weakness but of awakening. He thought of Trump's grin, of the words spoken under the Jerusalem sun. Could power truly bow and remain power? Could a leader serve and still lead? Days turned into weeks, and strange rumors began to ripple through the corridors of government. The president, they said, had changed. He visited hospitals without warning, not for photo sessions but to sit beside the sick. He entered ministries unannounced, asking the cleaners and clerks how they lived. He ordered that the state banquet be replaced once a month with open feeding for the poor within the villa's gates. "Are we turning the villa into a church?" one minister whispered. "Into a nation's conscience," Tinubu replied. He no longer raised his voice in meetings. He listened more, spoke less. The opposition press, confused, accused him of spiritual theatrics. But in the slums of Lagos and Kano, whispers began to rise. Perhaps the man has met God. One night, Tinubu sat again with his wife, Oyurimi, beneath the veranda. The crickets played their steady orchestra. "My dear," she said softly, "the people are talking about your change. Some say you become too humble. Others say you're planning something divine." Tinubu smiled. "Maybe both. Do you remember when we were younger, and I used to say politics is like chess?" "Yes." "I was wrong," he said, gazing at the dark horizon. "It is like planting. Every seed we plant, good or bad, will one day speak." She touched his hand gently. "You've seen something, haven't you?" He nodded. "A truth I can't unsee. The man who thinks himself king must first become servant. I learned that from a strange prophet, one who wears a red tie." She laughed quietly, shaking her head. "You and your American friends." But when she looked at him again, she saw not the politician she had known for decades, but a man stripped bare by conviction. The next morning, Tinubu called his cabinet together for what he named the Council of Renewal. When they assembled, expecting speeches on economy and security, he surprised them all. "My fellow servants," he began, and the room stirred at the word. "For too long we have spoken of prosperity without purity, progress without purpose. From today, we must lead differently, not by decree, but by example." A minister interrupted nervously. "Sir, the people do not respect humble leaders. They respect power." Tinubu's gaze hardened. "Then let us redefine power." He walked to the head of the long table, lifted a silver jug of water, and poured it into a basin. "What are you doing, sir?" someone whispered. He knelt. Gasps filled the room. One by one, he began to wash the feet of the ministers, men and women frozen between confusion and awe. "This," he said quietly, "is leadership." The cameras were absent. The world did not see it. But the walls of Aso Rock witnessed something history rarely records, a king kneeling before his council. When he finished, he stood, drying his hands. "From now on, every decision we make must pass this question. Does it serve or does it steal? If it steals, it dies here." And for the first time, even the most hardened among them found their eyes moist. Outside, Abuja thundered with early rain. The downpour washed over the city like baptism. Somewhere within the noise, Tinubu felt the same whisper he had heard in Jerusalem, a voice both gentle and commanding. "Feed my people." He smiled faintly, whispering back, "Yes, Lord." And though the rain fell hard, his heart was lighter than it had been in years. The rains did not stop for 7 days. They came like a cleansing river from heaven, washing the dust from Abuja's roofs, the tired smell of exhaust from the streets, and perhaps, though few realized it, some of the greed that had long settled over the land like Harmattan fog. In those 7 days, the president did not speak to the press. He was seen only once, stepping out under the drizzle to greet a group of displaced families sheltered near the villa gates. No cameras, no entourage, just a man with an umbrella, handing out bread with his own hands. An old woman, soaked to the bone, had looked at him through tears and whispered, "Are you truly our leader?" Tinubu smiled faintly. "Only if I lead you in love." And the woman said, "Then perhaps God has remembered Nigeria." By the 8th day, the sun returned, bright, merciful, new. It was as though the heavens themselves had signed a covenant. But inside Aso Rock, the storm was not yet over. The old guard were uneasy. Ministers murmured in private that humility would ruin them, that a leader's power must be felt, not shared. One afternoon, the vice president entered his office, carrying a brief marked urgent. "Your Excellency," he said, "this proposal, the foreign deal, it will bring billions into our reserves. The terms are tight, but manageable." Tinubu took the file and skimmed the pages. He read the numbers, the fine print, and the hidden clause between the lines. He set it down gently. "Who gains?" he asked. "So, who gains, truly?" The vice president hesitated. "Both parties, technically." Tinubu smiled without humor. "And the people?" A pause. Not directly, so. Tinubu rose. Then the deal dies here. The vice president frowned. But, sir, such decisions will cost us allies. So be it, Tinubu said softly. Better to lose friends of gold than lose the soul of a nation. And though the man left bewildered, somewhere deep within him a seed of respect began to grow. That night, the president could not sleep. The city outside was alive with the hum of power generators and night prayers echoing from far-off churches and mosques. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, until the soft ticking of the clock seemed to whisper his name. Then, in the stillness of 3 a.m., the light in his room dimmed, or perhaps it was the air itself that changed. A calm presence filled the space. He sat up. Standing before him was Trump, or rather, the dreamer Trump, radiant and composed, dressed not in suit but in white, eyes bright with peace. "Donald." Tinubu whispered. Trump smiled. Dreams are God's way of continuing unfinished conversations. Tinubu rose, trembling slightly. "Why are you here again?" Trump looked around the room. The framed flags, the golden furniture, the heavy curtains. "Because power still lives here," he said, "and power must always be reminded of who owns it." Tinubu nodded slowly. "I've tried to serve. I've washed feet. But the people still suffer. What am I missing?" Trump walked closer, his voice calm but piercing. "You have learned the posture of service. Now you must teach the nation to serve. Christianity is not a crown. Bola, it's a seed. It must be planted in systems, in schools, in how men treat each other in the market." He paused, resting a glowing hand on Tinubu's shoulder. "The secret you heard was never meant for one man. It's for a nation ready to be reborn." Tinubu's voice cracked. "But my people are divided. Religion here divides, not unites." Trump smiled softly. "Then give them faith that heals, not faith that hinders. Christianity is not about tribe or tongue. It is about truth and transformation." Tinubu swallowed hard. "And how will they believe me?" Trump turned toward the window where dawn was breaking, painting the sky with streaks of gold. "Let them see before they hear. Let your life become the sermon." When Tinubu blinked, Trump was gone. Only the pale morning light remained, and the whisper of a call to prayer echoing across the hills. By sunrise, he knew what he must do. That week, he called for a national prayer assembly, not the usual political spectacle, but a gathering of faith leaders, imams and pastors, priests and traditional elders. The invitation carried a single message: let us seek what unites us, not what divides us. They came, from Sokoto and Enugu, from Kano and Calabar. Some came suspicious, others curious. Cameras rolled, but even they could not capture the gravity of what unfolded that day. Tinubu stood before them, not as a head of state, but as a servant of God's mystery. "My brothers and sisters," he began, "for too long we have used religion as a sword. Today, let it become a lamp." He spoke of the encounter in Jerusalem, of Trump's strange words, of the power of humility. He confessed his own pride, his blindness, his transformation. His voice shook but did not falter. Christianity, Islam, our traditions, they all teach service. Yet we have built walls around truth. Today, I call us to build bridges. When he finished, silence fell, deep, almost holy. Then, from the front row, an elderly imam stood. His beard was white as snow, his eyes glistening. "Mr. President," he said, "may I wash your feet?" Gasps rippled through the hall. Tinubu hesitated, then slowly, humbly, nodded. The old man knelt and poured water from a small flask, wiping the president's feet with his robe. A Christian pastor rose and followed, washing the imam's feet in turn. Then others joined, one after another, Muslims, Christians, traditionalists, the mighty kneeling before one another. No decree could have done what that moment did. Something broke in the spirit of the land. The news spread like wildfire. Some mocked it, some wept. But in homes and schools and markets, people began to talk. If leaders can kneel, maybe we can change too. Students began volunteering in hospitals. Market women shared food with strangers. Civil servants donated a day's wage to rebuild orphanages. A new saying arose: to serve is to live. The tabloids called it the servant movement. The youth called it the new gospel of Nigeria. And though not everyone believed, no one could deny that something unusual had awakened, a moral tremor shaking the ground of an old nation. Months passed. One evening, Tinubu stood again on the veranda with Oyerimi. The sunset blazed like burning gold across the horizon. "The people are changing," she said softly. "Slowly, but truly." He nodded. "So am I. Every day I learn how small a man is before God's purpose." She smiled. "Do you still dream of your American friend?" He chuckled. "No need to dream. His words live here," he said, touching his chest. "He told me the secret, and I have seen its fruit." The call of a muezzin rose from afar, mingling with the bells of a distant church. It was as though heaven itself was singing harmony. Tinubu whispered, almost to himself, "Perhaps one day Nigeria will no longer be a country of religion, but a country of righteousness." That night, he wrote a letter, sealed it with a national emblem, but addressed not to any government or man. To the future leader of Nigeria, it began, "Power will tempt you. Fame will follow you. But remember, the greatest miracle is not turning stone to bread. It is turning power into service. If ever you forget, look upon the people, for they are the true altar of God." Signed, "A Servant of the Nation." He placed the letter in a drawer, smiled, and whispered, "Mission complete." Far away, in another land, Donald Trump stood on a quiet golf course, gazing at the horizon. A soft wind brushed his hair, and for a brief moment he felt a whisper on the breeze. It worked. He smiled, lifted his cap to the heavens, and murmured, "Thank you, Lord." And so, history did not record this meeting in the usual books of politics, but somewhere higher, in the secret chronicles of faith and destiny, where men learn that nations rise not by might nor by wealth, but by humility and service. For in the end, when the story of Nigeria was told in the language of heaven, one line would stand out. A man of power met a man of faith, and both became servants.